Hey, and welcome to the Joie Miller Podcast. I'm Pastor Joie Miller from Champion Christian Center, and I'm so excited that you're sitting down to chat with me today. This is an important discussion that we're going to have on confrontation, caring to confront, difficult conversations that actually will make life much easier. I am by nature not a confrontational person. For years, I would rather avoid conflict and just hold things in. But through the years, I realized that there is a better way to do things, a better way to live. I didn't want to confront because I was afraid of being rejected, or that person would misunderstand me, or that an argument would rise up. And I had to realize that as an adult, a part of communication is confrontation, and not all conflict is bad. That actually, when you learn to communicate through conflict in a way that's constructive, it can actually solidify relationships. That not every conflict has to end in an argument, that not every conflict equates to an argument, that there is a mature and adult way to work out differences, to bring understanding to misunderstandings, to amend hurt feelings in a way that we can learn to walk and flourish in our relationships. And so I want to talk to you for a few minutes about this subject, difficult conversations that actually make life easier, and how we can care enough about the people around us not to just avoid or cut them off, but actually caring enough to confront. We live in a world where we don't like to confront. We would rather just cancel, unfollow, delete. But we're going to talk about being mature and being grown-ups when it comes to our communication. So like I said, there's many reasons why we avoid confrontation, whether it's with a spouse, with a child, with a neighbor, with a church person or a coworker, whatever that looks like. There's reasons that we do it. And those reasons usually are, rejection, that we don't want them to be even more mad at us. We don't want them to take our words and misconstrue it, or we're just plain tired and we don't want to deal with it. But some things are worth dealing with head on. Confrontation doesn't mean you're in a fight, but you're in a mature conversation with somebody else. And it's an expression that you care enough about that person to bring clarity and understanding to a resolved outcome, that you care enough to say, hey, let's talk and let's work this out. When you're thinking about confrontation, think about how you would feel if somebody had an issue with you. Maybe you did something wrong, or maybe you did something and you didn't know that you did something wrong, or maybe you didn't do anything wrong and somebody perceived that you did something wrong. Would you want them to just go on assuming that you did that? Or would you want them to go on with bitterness or unforgiveness towards you? Or would you want them to come to you and have a conversation in a way to bring understanding and clarity, to give you a moment to bring your side of the story, or to have some resolve to the relationship or situation? I know I would rather have that conversation. I would rather somebody approach me and say, hey, you probably didn't mean to do this, but, or hey, when you said that, it made me feel like this. And being mature enough to talk through those things brings resolve and causes you to operate in unity and peace in the relationships around you. If you're in constant turmoil with the people around you, if every conflict sends off just an explosion in your life, you're going to have added stress. Your relationships are going to suffer. You're not going to be able to live in peace and unity with the people around you. So let's talk about confrontation for a minute. Jesus himself knew that we were going to have issues with each other. It wasn't like, oh, you're just all going to live in peace all the time and it's going to be happy-go-lucky. He gave us instruction in the word for things like unforgiveness and conflict. And he sets us up in Matthew 18 with a biblical example of what to do when we have an issue with somebody else. Now, he takes us to the limit of when your brother sins against you. But it says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So he's saying, look, if you have an issue with somebody, just the two of you, you don't need to tell 5 other people and then go to them. He said the biblical and Christian way to deal with conflict is to go directly to that person and say, hey, can we talk about this? And he says, if you can have that conversation, then you've won them over and you've made a resolve in that situation. But if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along to every matter that may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So he's saying, look, if you have one-on-one conflict, the right thing to do then is not to cut them off completely, is not to tell 10 other people what a jerk they are. It's to bring somebody else, a pastor or somebody, a mentor or somebody else of maturity into the room to mediate the conversation. And so he's laying out here that there are keys to walking in healthy relationships, caring enough to confront, that there's an easier way to do life in relationship with one another, especially as Christians. You shouldn't be sitting in a church service and being upset with the person 3 rows down from you. You should care enough for unity in the body. You should have enough of a reverence for God and his house to say, I want to make this right, even if it's an uncomfortable conversation that stretches me beyond my limits. So let's take a look at some 10 keys to healthy confrontation. 10 keys that'll help you have these difficult conversations. Number 1, before you confront, pray about it. Is it worth a conversation? If somebody does something small, you don't want to go have a conversation with them. If it's every little thing, then you're just going to be confronting people nonstop. You're going to actually be overly confrontational, which could be a downfall as well. So pray about it. Say, God, is this something that I can just overlook with no ramifications, no bitterness? I'm sure it was just a simple misunderstanding. Or is it something that I am choosing to engage in? Proverbs tells us that we need to choose our battles wisely. Proverbs 19:11 says, wisdom yields patience. It's to one's glory to overlook an offense. So if you can overlook it, the Bible says overlook it. But if you pray through it and you say, you know what, I feel like there would be good fruit that would result from having a conversation about this. If it's that person that you just keep encountering and you can just tell that there's just tension there, or if you keep hearing things from other people, you might want to just confront that person face to face in a spirit of love and unity and say, look, can we just talk about this and clear the air? Number 2 is know the time and place for the conversation. Timing is everything. If you are approaching somebody in the middle of a crowd or in the middle of a church service or in the middle of a friend gathering where there's other people around, it's probably not the best time for a one-on-one confrontation. You're setting that person up in a posture to be defensive. You want to say, God, help me find the time and the place and the space, not only the physical location, but allow it to be a good time for my heart, where I'm not operating from anger or bitterness. Sometimes we just need to walk away and pray about something for 24 hours before we have that conversation. Maybe it's your spouse. You say, you know what, I just need a minute to pray about this, that you're not avoiding it altogether and saying we're never going to talk about this and just pushing it under the rug and just avoiding it altogether and being a person of avoidance, but you're saying, hey, can we get back together in like a half an hour and talk about this after we've both cooled down a little bit? Knowing the time and the location for confrontation is key. Maybe you're confronting a leader in your organization or in your church. Being honorable about it, making an appointment, honoring and respecting them in a way that you're sitting down with a conversation. Nothing breaks my heart more as a church leader than to get an email with somebody maybe who had an issue, who's just writing the email to say they're leaving the church because they were offended, when they could have actually sat down and had a conversation with the person that offended them and cleared the air and resolved things. And so time and place, making sure your heart is in a right position and that you're seeking unity in the situation. When you're mad, you're not seeking resolve and understanding. You just want to tell that person off. You want to give them a piece of your mind. You just want them to hear your side of the story. Make sure your heart is at a place of peace. And this is where people get it wrong so many times. Number 3 is seek to understand from the other person's perspective. Don't be in a place of assuming things. When you assume things, a lot of times you end up looking like a fool because you're assuming either from your projection or from misunderstanding something about them, and you're addressing it all guns a-blazing, and they're like, I wasn't even thinking that. That's way off, and you end up looking bad in the process. Give them the benefit of the doubt. go into confrontation assuming the best in other people. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about that, making an allowance for other people's faults, assuming that they didn't mean what they said in the tone that they said it. And so going into the conversation in that way of seeking understanding and seeking peace, not just wanting to be right or just to justify yourself. Number 4 tip in dealing with conflict and having conversations that make life easier is to address the incident or situation, not the person. What do I mean? Don't make it personal. Don't go for the jugular. So many times I would just go in with my husband and I would just go into attack mode. And the fight would be, the conflict would be over something maybe like finances. And I would just, go into something crazy that attack him about something completely different. And when we make it personal, we magnify the conflict. And we make it not just about one thing, but we're now attacking their personal character. And of course, that person is going to become defensive and they're going to shut you off and not want to hear anything else that you have to say because you're being a crazy person. You're being irrational. And so stick to the topic. Separate the incident from the person. For instance, if somebody, you heard somebody said something about you when you're addressing them, say, help me understand because I heard this and it didn't seem like you to say this. You're giving them an opportunity to explain rather than saying you are just a gossip and you are horrible and you need to zip your lip. And so see the difference of how you approach those two conflicts. So you have to want to really seek a place of understanding and not attack the person. Address the incident, not the person. Don't attack their character. Number 5, keep the issue clear. Don't get sidetracked by little other side issues. Keep the objective clear. A lot of times when you're dealing with a conflict, that other person might say, well, you did this. And all you need to say is, well, we can discuss that a little bit later. But for right now, let's stay on topic. Let's talk about this issue to bring clarity to it. Because if not, there'll just be a million issues that surface and you won't deal with any of them. And the problem will just once again get bigger and bigger. And it'll turn into that argument that you feared that would happen. And so keeping the boundaries around that one isolated incident to bring that one incident to a resolve. And then if there's other things that you need to talk about, dealing with them one at a time. Number 6 is love first. Affirm the person's role in your life. Speak positive feelings first. So go into that conversation speaking from a place of love. You might not like the person at the moment. You might have struggled through even getting to the place of confrontation, but reminding yourself that love has to be the motive when we confront. When Jesus set this up in the book of Matthew for us to confront a brother or sister in Christ, he was assuming that we would be operating from the motive of love. And so that's the only way that this works. And so going into the conversation saying, maybe it's your spouse, like, I know you love me and you're an amazing husband and I want to talk about this so that we could get better. Instead of saying, you're lazy, you're horrible, you're a horrible husband. Instead of coming in from that place, or, you are a great friend and I value your friendship. Or, we belong to the same church body and I value you and I want to live and operate in unity with you. I think you have a great family. And so just really you're not lying. Find something to truly celebrate about that person and bring it to the forefront of the conversation and continue to affirm them throughout the conversation. Confrontation, like I said, it doesn't have to be an argument. So when you're affirming them through the confrontation, you're expressing like, I really do like and love you. It's not about my personal feelings toward you. It's about this incident. And so you can talk that through to bring it to a place of unity and resolve. You want to affirm that person's role in your life. Use I statements. Number 7, from your perspective, don't clump other people in with it. If somebody comes to you and they say, it's a one-on-one conversation and they say, we've all been talking about it. Well, what's your first response? Who's we and why have you all been talking about me? And so you're already in a place of defensiveness. You want to say I. you don't want to assume or bring other people into the conversation. You want to just keep it between you and that person, the way that you feel, because you can't speak for the 10 other people that might feel that way. One-on-one, Matthew says, between you and your brother or sister in Christ, have that conversation. You might say things like, I'm wondering why they would have said that. Can you help bring understanding to me? And so you keep it about you and them. And then you never use absolute words. It creates defensiveness, like always and never, because chances are they're not always mean to you, or it's not that they never do anything around the house. If it's a confrontation that you're having with a family member or a spouse, most likely they don't always, cause fights or disunity. And so try to steer away from using those absolute words that are already going to set them up to say they are way off here. They're shutting you off. If you bring it down to the one moment, they can find truth in it and relate to it and then open up to discuss it. Number 9 is be patient and use and monitor your tone and use good body language. And what this is a number one fault for me, if I'm being transparent in a confrontation, if I'm passionate about anything, my tone and body language, it rises. It just does. And so I have to be very careful. I was having a conversation just today with my daughter, and she said, "Why are you mad at me?" And I said, "I am not mad at you." And she said, "Well, your tone, it says that you're mad at me." And I said, "Well, I am so sorry. My tone, I'm going to readjust my tone to communicate what I'm truly feeling here, because the conversation that I want to have is important." So you don't want to overshadow what you're trying to say and speak with the tone and negate what the heart of the conversation that you're trying to have with that person. And so watch your tone, watch your body language. Don't get angry. Don't let that person trigger you. Make sure that you're not rising to their level. If their voice is rising, don't rise to them. Keep it calm and collected. And number 2 is give the other person time to respond. Communicate a clear plan or resolve to move forward. So don't just say what you had to say and then say, "All right, I'm out of here." Give that person time to respond and be open to hear their response, even if you don't like it. They might say, "Well, I responded this way, to be honest with you, because you said this and it hurt my feelings." And so you have to realize going into those difficult conversations of conflict that you might not like what that other person has to say, but you have to be willing to receive and respond to it in a manner that you would want them to treat you with as well. So give them time, give them space, and be ready to own up to anything that you might have done to contribute to the conflict, even if you didn't realize it. Listen, conflict's not fun. Having conversations like this aren't fun. But if you use conflict to your advantage, you can actually build relationships stronger. If you just don't avoid conflict, but you address it head on, difficult conversations that make life easier. Institute this, have a hard conversation, whether it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, a church member. It will only make your relationships better. I'll talk to you soon on the Joie Miller Podcast.